cuts like.
Shake, rattle, and roll. Everything rattle traps, plus a lot more. On this edition, Tackle Shop Live. Hey, hey, hey. What's up, everybody? Mark, how you doing? Trent, Jeff Rattle, what's up, man? Michael McCabe, how you doing, Mike? Man, oh man, Ed Brodnowski, Keith Howard, Mike Hayer, Richie Hall, how are you, Richie? Kevin Carpenter, what's up, Kevin? And Jason Basta, what do you say, Jason? How you doing? Man, it's good having you guys stopping in. Appreciate everybody tuning in for another edition of Tackle Shop Live. My name is Mike Acord. This is George Acord, and that is CG Gottwalt right over there. And the G stands for Get Me Fishing, Please.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Absolutely.
Yeah, buddy. Jimmy Arnold, how you doing, bud? Mike
Jimmy.
Barr. Eric Current, what do you say, buddy? William Barnes. Man, we got a great crew tonight stopping in. Jeff Brubaker. How you doing, Jeff? Well, we are here for another show, huh, guys?
I don't know how many it is, but
It's a lot.
I know it's a highlight of my week.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, except for this week.
Look forward to it all the time.
I got to play hooky and go fishing yesterday. That was the highlight of
Oh,
my week.
dude. Boy, did I see the show yesterday, man. Fishing with two Bassmaster Classic qualifiers on the back deck. I mean, all I can say is 17.70. Pictures to follow.
Pictures to follow.
Yeah.
Well, that's great. I'm glad you guys had a good time. George and Corbin and Greg DePalma got out yesterday in that windstorm, and they took advantage of the little bit of a rise coming on the river, and they caught a bunch of fish, and at least somebody was fishing. That's a good thing.
Yep.
So we're going to touch again on some rattle trap stuff. I know we kind of are beating this a little bit, but we didn't think we covered it as well as we should have. And plus, this is the time of the year to throw this bait. So we're going to touch on that here in just a few minutes and give you everything we know about rattle trap fishing from A to Z. We're going to go over the whole thing, and hopefully you guys will, I would say that hasn't rattle trap fishing kind of got away from a lot of guys? Seems like
There's so many new techniques and new baits that are always pulling at your attention that the old standbys kind of
exactly
gets set. But I think we're noticing in the shop here a little comeback to them.
Yeah,
the resurgence of the rattle trap.
Yeah, so we're gonna break all that down for you here coming up in just a few minutes. First, we got a couple announcements. As you guys know, we sponsored the Conowingo Bass Open Series down on the Conowingo Pool, and they had their championship tournament this past weekend, and they had 16 qualifiers.
Sunday.
They had 16 qualifiers that qualified for the championship, and to do that, you had to fish 5 of the 7 tournaments, and you had to purchase you just had to fish 5 of the 7, and then to get the bonus money, which was, I think, a little over $800 that me and George threw in the pot. All you had to do was spend $100 in the shop, which everybody always does. So it wasn't like a big deal. And, but it was a great tournament. The winner of that tournament was a team of Darren Dahl and Kenny Kleindetz Jr. They had a 5 fish, 1 largemouth, 4 smallies of 1433. So nice bag of fish. Their big fish was a 362. That anchored their 5 fish limit. Gave them the win.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So they were not eligible for the bonus money.
No.
So does that mean that nobody gets the bonus money?
No. It's spread down through the payout.
Oh, I thought it was one lump sum.
No. We they broke it down and spread it out through the payout.
So what if you're not eligible? Did they just rework all the numbers, or did they just slide it down?
Well, they got the regular payout, and then they slid everything else down. Yep.
Okay.
So the second place team was Dave Kovac and Brian Setlock. They came in with 5 fish, all smallmouth, for 1384, which is a nice bag down there. And it was tough conditions. They had some tough conditions down there. It wasn't the greatest day ever on the Conowingo pool, but it was still fairly good. And then it was the team for third place was the team of Dave McCulloch and Tommy Bennett with 1379. So this was a pretty tight match here. They had 1 largemouth and 4 smallmouth. And then the team of Herb Weichman and Marcus Griffin came in 4th with 1378. So they lost by they were just out of the regular payout money by 0.01. And then it was 5th place was TJ Calorie and John Ridolfi. And then 6th place was Ray Saganich and Mike Saganich. They fished all the tournaments. They had 9 pounds. Then Jeff Riddle and Jason Kelso was 7th. Jason Basta, who's joining us tonight, and Ben McCubbin. They had 5 fish for 694. And then Sean Pettigore and Greg Burdick, they had 5 fish for 663. They were in 9th, and 10th place was Steve D'Amato and Jeremy Boyd. They had 4 for 636. They were in 10th. And the 11th place was Nate Brown and Jan, and they had 613.
Good job on those last names, by the way.
Yeah.
You really nailed that. Nate Brown and Jan.
And Jan. That's what it says.
You nailed it.
I nailed it.
The other ones now, not so much.
Well, everybody understands all that.
No, it's
but
observations.
So that was a great series. It was a great year for the Conowingo pool. It fished very well. It was a lot of fun. A lot of teams came in. And the funny thing that they told me was the money was spread out over 16 different teams throughout the year. You know, the winning teams. It wasn't just the same teams winning all the time. There were 16 different teams that cashed checks, in the payouts. So the money got spread around really well, and there was that just shows you there's a lot of competition down there, and it's pretty tight match. So it's really anybody's game on the Conowingo pool at any day. So that's a wrap with that tournament series. They are going to have a winter series starting in Saturday, November the 6th, and they're going to run every weekend until December the 5th. You can show up at the boat ramp and pay your money and get in for a one-day derby.
Boy, that ramp ought to be nice after the first boat launches.
Yeah, they're going to keep an eye on that and keep make sure that everybody gets in and out safely. But it fishes really well in November down there, and that's why they wanted to do this series. And it's $100 per boat, $10 for lunker, going out of Dorsey Park. And they don't even launch till 7, so you don't have to get up early or anything like that. So that's coming up, and that's all the announcements I have. You have any announcements, Corbin?
No, not really. All
right. So there you have it. So let's get this show going. Man, a bunch of guys are checking in. Thank you so much from Facebook and over on YouTube. Make sure you hit your share button right now and share this with your friends so they can jump on and watch a little bit. If you guys can do that, that'd be great. And don't forget to like our pages and comment on our pages. That really helps us out, in gaining our ever subscriptions that we need. So we appreciate it. St. Cress, how you doing? Mark, how you doing, Mark?
It's a lot of button pushing.
It is. Don Roeder, how are you, Don? Todd Albright's here and Scott Kalen. All right. Well, let's get to it, man. We're going to talk some rattle trapping starting right now. Well, I don't know of a better technique this time of year, to get some bites. We had some pictures of some guys today that were out enjoying this beautiful weather that we had in that little bit of rise, fishing some local haunts around here. And they were just, and several of them were pictures with rattle traps hanging in their mouth. So,
and they were big fish.
And they were some big hammer dogs that they were catching. So that was pretty exciting to see that.
I mean, it's fair to say it's year round. It's a year round bait.
Oh, it is absolutely year bound. We're not talking about this just for now. This is something you guys can fish, all year round. It is, cold to cold. It just is this bait is just good for everything. And
especially if you got all the little tricks up your sleeve.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're going to get into all those. And I think I think where we want to start, and we're going to kind of break this down is with the color of the baits, and how color affects everything and how important color is with rattle trap fishing. And so when are you guys switching all your different colors, and what respect would you go from a shad color to a crawfish color to a red color? What causes that?
Well, I mean, for me, it's combination of things. One is season. I mean, in the spring, I'm fishing red rattle traps. That's my starting. That's where I'm going to start.
Mm-hmm.
If the water's clean, dirty, whatever, I'm searching for fish, with a red rattle trap. If I'm on tidal water, if I'm in a lake, if I'm out here fishing our beloved Susquehanna River, old school, Bill Lewis, red. Now there's a bunch of reds.
Oh, there's a million reds.
There's a bunch of reds.
And they're all good.
Yeah, I mean, this is like a traditional, back in the day, red. This is the System 8 color. Bill Lewis does the color
selector.
Thank you.
Color selector,
and it's SY8, System 8. It's red shad, which is kind of morphed into like a Delta crawl. This is and this is another big, Mike. This is another big thing in the spring, particularly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Rattle trap.
Yeah.
Knocker.
Yeah.
Trap in the spring of the year. This not only is it a color thing, but it's sometimes the knocker really plays.
Yeah, and I think we're going to discuss sound a lot because I believe in sound.
Yeah, I mean,
a bunch.
For me, the reds, and you need to have a few different reds. You need to have there's 3 different shades of red, and there are 3 important shades, and there's others. There's others. This is a classic spring red right here. This is a what they call an orange crawl. I mean, this is probably one of the most newer. Back in the day, this guy down here and this guy up here were the man. This is probably one of the more newer contenders for most important, lipless crankbait. And this is a orange crawl. This is a
red eye shad,
really big time spring color. And another color that's really big in the spring in your red family is what they call a Delta crawl, which is going to vary from manufacturer to manufacturer, but it's a Delta crawl referring to the California Delta. So this is a big color out there, and everybody makes something like that. So your reds, for me, that's a starting point for the spring. Now, I don't know about you, Corbin, but because I know you have some really specific guidelines to choosing color that I follow because I believe in them. But the other color in my book that's equally important in the spring is chromes.
Okay. Yeah.
Chrome blue, chrome black.
Gold sexy.
Yeah, gold sexy, chrome sexy. So here's a gold. There's a gold Yozuri.
It's missing a hook, George.
Yeah. You should have seen the fish that ate that hook.
Yeah.
Last time I saw him, he was picking his teeth with it as he was swimming away. There's a gold Bill Lewis. There's a gold Spro. So, I mean, there's numerous shades of gold. Here's a gold. Here's a classic gold right here. TN70. Gold blackback. Real important. I like it on a cloudy day. And I also like it in dingy water when they're not eating the red. So you got to keep that in mind too. And Corbin, I know you have some interesting color scenarios that have to do with the sky color and ghost baits versus painted baits.
Yeah, I mean, for me,
We didn't talk about chartreuses.
Yeah, I know. I mean, and I'm not gonna talk about like styles of colors, or I think we're talking about styles of traps in a little bit. But for me, my starting point is pretty simple. If the water's dirty, I'm throwing painted, or I'm throwing gold, something with gold in it. If the water's clean and cloudy, I'm gonna throw something painted. And if it's clean and crystal clear, I'm gonna throw like a ghost minnow. And it's pretty simple. But for me, I don't like throwing a red rattle trap. For being a predominantly smallmouth fisherman, I don't like throwing a red rattle trap unless it has a lot of orange in it. So for me, my starting point is something like this, where you have the red with the orange mixed in, like the Delta Crawl. For the golds, I'll go with the Wild Shiner is definitely a good one. But the thing I like about like the Spro Wild Shiner is it's 5/8 ounce, so it sinks quick. You can cover a lot of water with it, and I'm sure we'll talk about how it runs nose down. But the gold does not overpower the chrome on that bait, and it's not a true gold rattle trap in my book. It's a mixture of, if they want flash, whether it's gold or silver, they're going to eat that bait because it has both on it. So for me, that's one of when George talks about they're eating the chrome, I like to throw that when it's sunny. I don't like to throw it when it's cloudy, particularly. Because I like to see that flash, reflection, sight feeding, all that stuff. And I use the exact same colors I would with jerk baits for the most part.
Yeah, I mean, and those are excellent points. I really wanted you to, because I know you're big on that painted versus ghost, and that's really, really important. If you guys didn't really hear what he said there, on a cloudy day, on an overcast day, a painted bait, and we're referring to a bait that's anywhere from a matte to you can't see through it. So when we say painted, you can't see through the bait.
It's a solid side. Yep.
Or a flat color.
Mhm.
Yep.
That's painted. Okay.
Yep.
This is really good in low light or dingy water. One of the most famous, there was a guy that won a big tournament on this one right here. This is called the Sexy Shad.
Yep.
Right.
And I mean, they got Sexy Shad everything.
Yeah.
This is a paint. This is probably the most famous. Well, here's a copy of it. Every bait company in America makes a Sexy Shad or a sultry shiner, or I mean they have
spooky, nasty.
It's because this guy right here, this won the classic. And it is, I mean, a perfect painted bait. Okay. And then by ghost baits, what he was referring to
translucent.
Is translucent, So in the trap world, your ghost baits, let's say for the early part of the year, probably aren't going to play a lot because you're usually dealing with spring water, dirty water, dingy water. But in the summer and fall months, your ghost baits are going to be big players. So it's really important to look at your sky color.
Mm-hmm.
Right, Mike?
Yep.
And your watercolor.
Yep.
And all we're saying is on color here, it's a starting point. And I'm here to tell you, I want to reiterate the red. If you are springtime fishing on a largemouth fishery And I throw it a lot on smallmouth fisheries too, but particularly on a largemouth fishery and particularly where grass comes in play. You need to have your trap game dialed in. You're going to start in early spring fishing a trap. I'm talking around here in March when the water's still in the 40s, the high 40s. You're going to use your trap and you're going to drag it like you're dragging a football jig. And you're feeling for that stubbly grass. And that, that stubbly grass gets kind of crisp when the sun gets on it, when it's early in the year, the fresh grass that you got a nice little warm trend. It gets crisp and that bait will hang up in it and you can pop it out of there. And you better be starting your day off with a red trap of some nature. If you're on grass, on a lake or on a tidal body of water, and you better have you some chrome, blue, some gold, black. I mean, those are 3 you better have.
Well, and I know you're talking mainly about grass here. You guys, rattle traps are a big deal on hard cover in the spring and in the fall and in the winter, whether it's ledges, whether it is ditches,
pea gravel flats.
And I mean, just think of it this way. If you are fishing rock or an area where crayfish live or it looks like crayfish habitat, you're going to want to throw a crayfish colored rattle trap. If you look at your screen and you see a bunch of bait fish, okay, because most people are using some kind of electronics, whether it's down imaging, side imaging, maybe you caught a couple fish on a jerk bait, you're going to want to throw a bait fish kind of trap because that means there's bait around the cover that you are fishing. And,
sure,
for me, when I'm fishing hard cover in the spring, I'm going to go with like the orangish color. But there's one color in particular, George, that I think we got to talk about because the old Fire Tiger rattle trap sometimes comes out to play, and like the SY5 color selector and like those. Well, I don't want to call them goofy colors, but they have their moments where like
the W4,
yeah,
the old Bill Lewis W4, which was the walleye 4.
Yeah, I mean
that was the old school, like, shall I say, bomber Fire Tiger pattern, Mike?
Yeah,
you remember the walleye 4?
Oh yeah,
and stuff like the all chartreuse,
shad.
Yeah.
Again, going back to Strike King, they have what's called the chartreuse shiner, a sleeper chartreuse colored trap. And in the spring of the year, you can tell because the sales at sfttackle.com of chartreuse shiner red eyes are stout, and they're going out to different, grass lakes. They're going down to the Gunnersvilles of the world, and they're going to the, the places that have the famous grass flats on them. And there's certain parts of the country where that chartreuse plays.
Yeah.
More than others.
It played yesterday. I mean, Greg DePalma caught a smallmouth on a half-ounce chartreuse rattle trap with us yesterday. So
we've thrown a trap a lot yesterday due to the varying conditions we were having.
Yeah. But Mike, how about you, man? Talk about some of your colors.
Well, I'm big on this, on the same colors you guys are. I fish a lot of red and dirty water. That can be any time of the year. I fish a red trap. Spring, summer, winter, fall, when water's dirty, I think it's a really good color to throw, along with those golds, like George said, and Corbin. But the big thing is about color is, and it's crazy. I mean, there's certain things you got to have a bunch of different colors of, and the traps world. I mean, there's a box right there. That's one of our 2 boxes that we have. And there's 40 baits in there. Now, these are baits we collected over the years, but it covers the whole spectrum from the painted side to the clear, see-through baits to the red, all the different reds that we throw, and then the chartreuses,
all the chromes
are in there, and then all your chromes, because the fish are very specific for the particular day that you're in, and we see that all the time. So color. That's why I wanted to start with color, because it is a big thing in rattle trap fishing. It really, I can tell you this, fishing with these 2 guys a lot. It's funny because we'll start throwing rattle traps, and we won't be getting bites or whatever, and then everybody's cutting stuff off and retying and trying something else, and they're messing around and kind of seeing what's going on and making some very small various changes, and then all of a sudden, boom, something starts happening. And it always happens, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And you know, then we start dialing in from there, and then we just nail it down, and everybody starts throwing the same kind of whether a painted bait or a see-through bait, whatever the day was about. So that's why I wanted to start with color, because it is
Yeah.
such a
I mean,
big it's such a big deal with rattle traps.
you're going to start. You got to start somewhere. You got to make an assumption in the morning
Yeah.
or whenever you start your day, and you have to start somewhere. But then you have to be a detective.
Yep.
You have to pay attention. Something that's interesting. I fished the Potomac River a lot, and you can go on the Potomac River in July, August, and the crawfish are as red as those red. I mean, they are this color red right here. Hold on. They are. I mean, you can see them walking around on the grass mats from a distance. So many of them that it looks like little red leaves that blew on top of the grass. And that's July, August, crystal clear water. You know, red will play, and if you're paying attention to, you know, your local, you know, what you're observing. If you're around a bunch of bait fish, and the water's, you know, clear, and the sky's sunny, might call for a ghost style bait.
Yeah, and there's
You know,
there's some great
you got to make adjustments.
Yeah, and there's some great companies now that are doing bluegill colors and crayfish colors, and there's blacks out there now, black with chartreuse, black with blues on it. There's all these different colors that I don't say you have to have every single color that's out there, but should have a nice selection in your box so you can match the situation that you're in, and that is really, really key when it comes to rattle trap fishing. So kind of moving on with that is shapes and size.
Yeah.
And then also how that bait kind of works, you know,
how it wiggles,
how you have the shake. And then maybe what we could also throw in this is the sound. There's several different sounds that are out there that play a big role. So what are you saying about size? And you know, you see rattle traps that are, you know, quarter ounce, you see in your half ounce, you're seeing your 3/4, you're seeing 3/8, you're seeing man, all the way up to 1 ounce.
7/8.
You know, guys are throwing 1 ouncers out there, you know. So what do you want to do? I mean, what's the importance of that?
Matching the bait,
yeah,
and matching the depth. So for me, I carry a few quarter ounce traps. So let me show you a size comparison here. So here's a quarter ounce Bill Lewis. And you'll notice on this trap here, you probably can't see it real good, but I have upsized the hooks. Okay, so I went to a same set of hooks on here that I run on a half ounce trap, because this is one of my tournament traps. And you know, I'll fish that in two circumstances. I'll fish that in heavily pressured grass flats, like in the spring. And you know, for example, Aquia Creek on the Potomac, which is a parking lot. Yeah, Corbin's going to get this to focus up here, and you'll see the size difference there. There, almost, Corbin. But there you go, Corbin. So the top bait's obviously the half ounce original Bill Lewis, and the bottom is the quarter. And I've upsized the hooks on the bottom to the Gamakatsu, you know, round bend, which is a good strong hook. But the quarter ounce plays when, you know, I'm faced with heavy fishing pressure, and I'll come in and get behind and around a lot of boats that are trapping grass flats in the spring.
That's a good point.
And I'll downsize. I'm going to show you another example of a small trap. This little guy right here is even smaller yet. So there is a time and a place for these real little traps. You know, this little guy right here was the only bait I could get bid on in a fall BFL on the Hudson. It was a super tournament on the Hudson. It was tough as nails. And I freaking smashed them for 2 days on that little thing. They would not eat anything. They would not eat that. They absolutely would not eat that. So it pays to keep a couple of small baits in your box to match the size of the bait and to match conditions of fishing pressure. The other place I throw that little trap is in real shallow water, or if I'm trying to swim it over top of grass that only has a little bit of water over top of it. That's my deal on small baits, Corbin. What's your take on some of the standard size and some of the larger size baits?
So for me, I throw a multiple brands of traps. I do not throw a lot of Bill Lewis traps. I throw Spro, I throw Jackal TN70 a lot, and I throw Strike Kings. And the reason why I throw them is because I can do everything with those. Like, the Spro, okay, and the TN70 by Jackal, they run nose down. Okay, so they run like this. Let me get the hook out of my finger first. but they run nose down. Okay, and I don't know, you can't really see this, but these two baits right here weigh the same amount. The Spro and the TN70. All right, they both weigh 5/8 ounce. So when George is talking about downsizing to a 1/4 ounce trap for the size of the bait, I just go to the TN70 because it's got a smaller profile. Thus, it sinks better. It sinks faster in current because it's not as buoyant. Okay. Plus, it's got a tungsten lip, so when you hit something hard, it makes a different pinging sound.
Sure.
So for me, these are two of my starting ones. But because they run nose down, you can crawl them along the bottom better. Okay. They have excellent hooks on them. And the other thing is I mix the red eye shad in with them if I'm more on a flutter retrieve, because when you pull that red eye shad up, it's almost like a combination between a blade bait and a rattle trap for me, because when you pull it up, it flutters and then it shimmies on the fall. Okay.
Yeah.
So the TN70 doesn't do that as much because it runs nose down. The Spro does a little bit, but not near like the shimmy of the red eye shad. So for me, those are the three that I carry a lot of. And everyone has a different sound. They have a different size. So I use those to kind of match the hatch. And, I've got multiple colors of all of them.
Yeah.
So
absolutely. And I agree with that 100%. The one key thing though that you kind of touched on there was the different baits. And one thing I noticed about a red eye shad also is you can reel that a lot slower.
Yeah.
And maintain a depth range, so it doesn't sink like some of these other baits real quick and fast. It kind of, it just like Corbin says, it does flutter a little bit more. And then it also, when you, I think the width of the lip on it's a little bit, or the top of it's a little bit wider, a little bit longer. And when you reel it through the water, it pulls a little harder and it lifts up a little bit more, and you can control the depth a lot nicer on it. So that shape is, for me, is a little bit slower retrieve. The TN70 and the Spro I like for the nose down, and just the flash of them and the size and the castability of it. And there's another thing right there. The different weights for the distance of casting. I know Corbin, man, that freaking guy, man. You want to see somebody cast a rattle trap, or you should go fishing with him. He will almost empty a spool when he casts. I don't know. I mean, it's unbelievable, but he covers a lot of water and he gets out there and he gets away from the boat and he gets to fish that aren't pressured as much and don't feel it,
Yeah.
And it's amazing. So you can really, really zing them out there.
Yeah, I mean, I don't carry a lot of 1/4 ounce baits with me, but I'll tell you, when you're in that really shallow water,
yeah,
they make a difference. But I would say, to sum up the size of the bait, I think all three of us are in agreement. The standard size, be it a 1/2 or a 5/8, which is pretty much your standard. That's going to cover the bulk of our trap work.
Sure.
There's times when, obviously we discussed the need to go to a 1/4, because you're fishing super shallow water.
I mean, we've all experienced that small trap deal, right? Like you said.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, one thing that none of us do a lot of is upsize.
Yeah.
We're not ones to go to 3/4. Although we fish the Aruku, which is 7/8. I mean, it's or 5/8. It's pushing there. It's a little over a half, but we're not ones to go to that bigger 3/4 or 1 ounce body.
Yeah.
I think that is something that if you're in a fishery that has really big bait fish, like this time of the year, there's certain fisheries where the fish will key in on those really big gizzard shad.
Yeah.
If you're in that type of a scenario, in the spring of the year, we've talked about it many times on the tributaries of the Chesapeake Bay. When you get that herring run, that spawning herring run, and those herring are spawning, those bass will absolutely key on those herring, and they're 5 and 6 inch bait fish.
Yeah.
And I've actually seen people in my boat, co-anglers in tournaments, do well at hooking 6-pound fish on 3/4 ounce traps, but I've never seen them do really well at landing 6-pound fish on 3/4 ounce traps, because therein lies the problem. You got a heavy, massive weight that acts as a, as they're flailing their head around. You better make sure you have the proper hook, which is something we're going to get into later.
Yeah. Well, I think we should step into that right now because, traditionally, and you've heard us talk about them already, is the hooks on these baits. And the reason you have to make sure, and if you do it in anything, make sure when you're rattle trap fishing that your hooks are laser sharp. I mean, they got to be sharp. They got to be sticky. They got to be a quality hook on there. Now, the nice thing is that since 15 years ago or 18 years ago or 20 years ago, the hook game has really stepped up on these baits.
The manufacturers aren't cheap anymore.
Yeah, I remember when George would buy a 100 count pack of Gamakatsu number 4s and a 100 pack of Gamakatsu number 6s, and at the beginning of every year, and then we would just sit there and he would just change out all the rattle trap, because we threw a lot of rattle traps back in the day. That's why our box is full of them.
The hooks they had on them,
they were terrible.
And
there was a lot of other companies that
should have sold them without hooks.
They should have. And you just sit there and you would change your hooks out. But now they've come through. They're coming through some really nice hooks.
Here's Bill Lewis. Now, Bill Lewis has upped their game
big time
a while ago.
Yeah.
Okay. They're not. This isn't recent. This is 5-6 years ago.
Yeah.
So
they're doing
Bill Lewis is now packaged with a Mustad triple grip treble hook.
Absolutely.
So, you take it out of the package,
and you fish it.
Yep. Spro baits.
Yep.
Are all packaged with Gamakatsu hooks.
Yep.
You take them out of the pack and you fish them.
Yeah.
You don't have to change them out.
Right.
Yep.
Lucky Craft, the LV 500s, they come with chemically sharpened VMC treble hooks.
Yep.
I think you get where I'm going here.
Yeah, exactly.
These baits are pretty much all coming with a quality hook out of the package. Now, oddly enough, if you're a tournament fisherman, you might want to upgrade your hooks on your red eye shads. I mean, they're a good hook, but if you are in a position where losing a fish is going to be devastating for you, then I would upgrade the hook on the red eye shad.
Yeah. Well, the other thing too, George,
or sharpen it.
Especially like Corbin likes to fish a lot of rock, and he's fishing a lot of rock and ledges and stuff.
Yeah.
And even some of the gravel that you're fishing during the day, you should touch up your hooks all day long with a nice quality file and just check them, make sure they're nice and sticky. Because this is like George had alluded to, these baits they're solid baits. They're heavy, they're heavy baits. They're a bait when a fish jumps out of the water and starts kicking, they can create a lot of whip in the bait and throw it very easily. So it's important to have really good quality hooks on there. So
well, Mike, another thing about sharp hooks on any bait, but particularly a bait like a trap in the spring and again in the fall, winter, the fish's mouths are harder
Yeah.
in the spring and in the fall winter period.
Yeah.
And you need that sharper hook is even more important under that circumstance.
Yeah. So we talked about, another thing that a lot of guys are doing to kind of combat some of this and get a better hook in them is going to upsize their hooks, Corbin. And companies have listened to this. And one of the problems with upsizing your hooks with regular hooks, if you go a number 4 and a number 4, they hook together.
Right.
When you're casting them. So because the shaft of the treble hook is too long. So these companies, like one right here is the Mustad Ultra Point short shaft from the triple grip short shaft, and this is the hook that KVD uses all the time. And he'll upsize. He'll go to a 2 and a 4. He'll go to a 4 and a 4. He does. He puts big hooks on these baits to get that better bite on those fish. But you can do that with these short shank hooks, and by that I mean the part that goes from the eye of the hook to the bend of the hook is a shorter length, so that it doesn't go back and hook the other hook, and it allows you to upgrade. And then the other one here is the Magic Guy by Gamakatsu, and that's a short shank hook. So this is a little bit thinner wire hook. It penetration's a little bit nicer for lighter lines and whatnot. But this is another one, is the Gamakatsu treble EWG short shank that you can also use to upgrade and get a better hook in those fish, because it's all about landing those fish. And George kind of said with those big traps, man, it's, when they get to jumping and swinging stuff, they can throw them very, very easily. And that's one of the things you can do to help out. And then the other thing is rod, which we'll get into in a minute.
Yeah, if you look at your hook packages, and not all the hook companies do a good job of this, but most do. They'll say something like 1X short,
Yeah.
1X strong. That just means that from a standard hook, that's what you're looking for. If you're looking at your standard hook, like I like to fish the round bend Gamakatsu, the standard round bend Gamakatsu. Well, if I need to shorten that shank up, I want to look for a hook where it says 1X short.
Yeah.
If I'm getting around really big fish and I'm fishing heavier tackle, then I might want to go to a 1 or 2X strong. That means the wire's a little stiffer, a little thicker.
Right.
So if you know what that means when you're shopping for your hook, you'll be able to make sure you didn't make a mistake and order the wrong hook if you're not at a shop where you can see them.
Yeah. Absolutely. So, there's some points there, little tips for you guys to, to take a look at if you're having a problem with losing fish, or you're having a problem with, hooking up or whatever. Really pay attention to those hooks, and pay attention also to the sizes that we talked about.
Those dull hooks will hurt you.
And the reason, yeah. But anyway, Scott Callan's in. He's checking in. Gogo Gomez is here in the house. Gogo, I saw you did well in the Delaware tournament. Hopefully, and the way it sounds, you did something on a trap. So that goes along well. And he had a good finish down there, I think second or third. Keith Cowan, how you doing, buddy?
You know what he did at that Delaware tournament?
Yeah.
He won it.
He did.
he took Gogo's thunder.
Yeah, so that's what we have. We have the first place, and I think the third or the second. I don't know where Gogo ended up, but those guys are Keith once again is the captain of the New Jersey state team. So congratulations to you guys, and congratulations, Keith, on your victory. So
is Gogo, are you on that state team? And inquiring minds want to know that.
Yeah, he's on.
That's awesome.
He's on. And Jeff Gorecki, how you doing, Jeff? So let's keep moving on this. We have a lot to cover here. And I think the next big topic is the retrieve of a rattle trap. And this is something that I think Corbin can really kind of enlighten us on. And it'll go into the shapes and sizes and baits of what we use. And
absolutely,
yeah. And there's a couple of ways.
There's an art to it.
Yeah, there's several ways of fishing a rattle trap. And Corbin, what how do you feel about the different retrieves?
Well, that's also going to take us into like rod and reels or like rod as well, because certain retrieves use different things for. So the technique that they're talking about for me is almost like a sweeping retrieve, where this is what I use predominantly in the late fall, early winter. Water temps on its way down anywhere from 55 down to 42, 38. I've caught them this way. And I use a 7.5. Basically, it's a crankbait rod. And I literally throw this trap halfway across the river. And I literally just kind of sweep it and I reel in the slack. And I do that with that TN70 because it's a smaller profile. And the farther that you can throw a rattle trap, okay, away from the boat, the better off that you are, and particularly in like the clearer water. And with this bait, it's a smaller, it's only 2.8 inches, okay, but it's 5/8 ounce. So it's the same size as a Spro weight wise, but it's about half the size, okay, in terms of like the body. So it sinks faster. All right. And when you do that and it gets down to the bottom, it gets down quicker. So it cuts current better. I'm using 10-pound high seas fluorocarbon. And when I flutter it just a little bit, you can literally feel the tip of the rod. It just goes barely hopping off the bottom. All of a sudden they just come and they annihilate it. But you got to have enough backbone on the rod, to get the hook in them. So that's why for me it's a 7.5 to 7.6. Throw it as far as you can. And this is not the rod that I'm using for yo-yoing or other things like that. This is a rod that I'm using for literally burning flats, casting parallel to ledges, troughs, ditches, right where they pull into winter holes, that kind of stuff. The other thing that I like to do when I'm yo-yoing a trap is I actually use a graphite rod. And I do that because if they bite it and you're all the way at the top of your yo-yo, okay, you still have enough backbone for them to eat that trap. So,
Yeah.
The gear ratio for me on the long cast on like the 7.5 cranking is a 6.2. On the yo-yo, it's a 7, so that I can run down and pick it up. But those are my two techniques, like really just a slow, steady retrieve, okay, or sweeping technique. And then obviously the yo-yo, which everyone's
I love that
familiar with.
sweeping technique. And you're deadly with that, man.
Yeah.
You are freaking deadly with that sweep technique. It's awesome to watch it. It really is, because it's kind of difficult to do because you're kind of dragging it in the nasty for a little bit,
Oh yeah.
So it's tricky.
Yeah, and with that technique particularly, actually with a couple of the techniques we're going to talk about, you have to get over your fear of getting snagged.
I hate getting snagged.
Oh man,
I hate getting snagged.
I feel like I'm kicking rocks every time I get snagged.
Man, terrible.
But you have to get over your fear of getting snagged because you are going to get snagged a lot. But before we move on to a couple of other retrieves that we favor, let's talk about that. Getting snagged.
Yeah.
The worst possible thing you can do when you think that you're snagged, and I use the word think because a lot of times you're not actually snagged. You're at the beginning stages of a snag.
Right.
The worst possible thing you can do is start doing this. Now you are snagged. Congratulations, you won. If you will be disciplined enough to say, oh, wait a minute, and do the old boomerang trick, which we've talked about numerous times before, get an armload of line out, load the rod, bow it up, flick that rod and pluck that line like you're, picture like rolling a rope out on the yard. Or you're stretching your line and kind of rolling it back out, snapping it back. You will be amazed, other than a piece of wood, the amount of times that bait will pop free of the potential snag and convert into a bite because, that bait is kind of like in the house. And then all of a sudden it makes that erratic move. How many times have we popped a bait off of a snag and then we're like, oh hell. Oh.
Well, George,
right?
I remember one particular time that you did this.
Oh.
And
let's
just say that Bill McDermott was on your boat, Greg DePalma was on mine, and Setlock
that's a
was on your
story
boat,
for another day, man.
and a flathead ate it on a reaction bite. Next thing you know, we're running around chasing it with a lure retriever.
That's a whole different story for a whole nother time. But that if you can master that that boomerang, bow and arrow, popping technique, with all your baits. I mean, really it translates to every potential snag you have. It will generate a lot more bites. It'll free your bait up a very high percentage of times.
Yeah.
And but your bait's where it needs to be. That's why it's getting tight.
And if you get good at it, then you won't be as afraid to do it the way you need to do it. So,
and you need to get over that, because some of these techniques, like the technique I'm going to talk to you about next, your bait's on the bottom. In that early spring time frame that I really relish a trap for. When I'm on, grass flats, or, a lot of times I'm on that transition where that deep water meets the shore, and then that transition starts to form that flat, because they're following that deep water to the bank, and then they're getting those couple of nice warm days, sprucing that grass up, and those fish are going to be right on that transition. I like to do what basically worming the trap. It's an early season technique. I cast that trap out to the bottom. I let it sink to the bottom, and then I use my rod and I drag it, and I reel back, and I drag it, and I reel back. I'm worming the trap. My trap is nose down. If you look at this trap box right here, there's no paint on the nose of these traps. It's all gone. My trap is digging with its nose, snagging the grass. I'm ripping it and popping it, and it's a very, very good early season technique, followed up and kind of coexisting with a yo-yo technique. So the yo-yo technique, Mike, I think the biggest thing we've learned with that is the rod choice.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, we're not using per se a cranking rod for that.
No, we're using a little bit stiffer rod, and something that has a little backbone, that you can, most guys, well, us guys up here, we're using graphite poles for our yo-yoing.
I mean, I'm fishing a 7-foot medium heavy fast.
Yeah.
I'm fishing a 7.2 medium Zodius or a 6.10 medium Zodius.
Yeah.
I'm fishing an 843.
Yeah.
Or a 7-foot medium fast St. Croix.
Well, that yo-yoing technique that we talk about, that's what we're getting into right now. That this season for us coming up here is where we're going to do a lot more yo-yoing and dragging and sweeping like Corbin does. He does that sweep thing really, really well, and you can really flutter that bait just above the bottom, and then let it hit the bottom and flutter it real nice with that sweep. And then that yo-yo, you're just kind of picking it up and fluttering it right in.
Yeah, what's the key to that yo-yo? What's like the key for you on that yo-yo retrieve?
Well, the big thing is to follow your bait back. When you're firing it out and you're yo-yoing it up, you kind of pick it up and then you're just kind of floating it back. And it's a very controlled type of a retrieve. It's just not picking it up and then reeling back down. You're not picking it up and reeling right back down. You're picking it up and you're kind of following your bait down and helping it down, and
sort of semi-slack.
Yeah, it's like a semi-slack
controlled
type of
slack.
thing. It's a controlled.
Yeah.
It's more of a controlled fall, and it's almost like when you pick it up, you can pick it up at different speeds too. You're not snapping it up. Sometimes they want it snapped up,
and that's the key part of that retrieve. You have to experiment with that.
Yeah, you have to experiment with sometimes they and then they want it to fall, and they want it to fall. So other times they just want this real more of a thumper kind of pickup, and then a slow fall, and a thumper kind of pickup and a slow fall. So you have to mess with that type of retrieve on that quite a bit. And a stiff rod allows you to feel what's going on there, and allows you to to get the hook when you feel, because these bites are really weird. They're not like thump bites. They're just like weight gets on there.
Well, and you're out of position a lot.
I mean, you are out of position. So the stiffer rod really helps with that. I
sort of have another question for you.
What?
Follow up to that.
What's that?
Line.
Yeah. We're fishing all heavy line. We're fishing a much heavier line than a lot of guys, because we're fishing a lot of rocks. So we're 12-pound test, 15-pound test, fluorocarbon line.
Now that's for your fall time.
That's my fall rock fishing type of thing. And even in my spring, I like 12.
Yeah.
You know, like 12 a lot. You're fishing 12, aren't you, Corbin?
10.
You're 10.
10.
I in the fall, I cut back a little bit. I might go to 12, but in the spring,
Heavy.
yeah. And what that's going to do for me is two things. One, particularly if I'm fishing shallow grass, is I can help buoy my trap up a little bit, with a 17 to a 20-pound line. I've never fished below a 15 fluorocarbon in the spring or the summer months on a trap. Never. Now in the fall, if the water's cold, now early fall I'm using that 15, but if the water gets cold and clear, which it's going to here, and you're more of a, you're not a straight retrieve type, then I'm going to drop my line back to a 10, maybe a 12, maybe a 10 in the really cold water. But the rest of the year, the beauty of the trap is it works better on heavier line. That spring bite, when you're trapping grass flats, and I'll tell you something else that's interesting about line, guys. I spent a long period of time my trap setup was a glass 7-foot crankbait rod, medium powered, moderate tapered glass crankbait rod, and I trapped with 30-pound braid in the spring on that grass. That combo, once you get to know the feel of that combo and you get to know the effects of that line on that trap, and you get dialed into that setup, that combo is pretty deadly. I got away from it. It's not really forgiving. Also, it kind of ties that rod up for me when I start getting into a transition period where I'm doing a lot of other cranking with that rod, because I absolutely do not like to crank anything else other than a wake bait on braid. So that rod kind of got tied up for me when I was getting into that, later spawn, post spawn period with this braid on it. And the only thing I was doing with it then was wake baiting. So it kind of took it out of rotation. So that almost more than anything is why I got away from that, Mike.
Yeah. I've always used glass rods for a lot of my rattle trap fishing. I feel like, along with the hooks and go into a S class. So I've fished mostly S class for the traps. That combination has totally changed everything, for land and fish, and that's getting them in the boat. I mean, it just, you hook them, you get them in the boat with that combination. Sharp hooks, keeping them sharp throughout the day, and a glass rod, or a composite rod. But for me, a S glass style rod, it will get the fish in the boat no matter what, and you lose very, very few with that combination. And but you have to be diligent with all your steps, the hooks, keeping them sharp, putting good hooks on there. When they get nicked up, make sure you sharpen them, and then that rod, you don't lose them.
Well, I think the key is get used to the combo that you're using. Like Corbin's fishing a 7.5 deep flex Loomis medium heavy crankbait rod when he's sweeping his trap and winding his trap. And then he's using a completely different rod when he's in a full on like yo-yo retrieve. I'm other than a winding presentation, when I'm just winding big open flats, particularly hardcover, that's about the only time I use a crankbait rod with a trap. Other than that, when I'm specifically fishing grass or I'm yo-yoing a bait in the fall of the year, I'm using a more of a standard, what I would call a rod that I've talked to you guys about a million times. It's kind of a utility rod, a 7-foot medium power fast taper or a 7.2 medium power fast taper, regular multi-purpose rod. I fish topwater on it. I fish a square bill on it a lot when I'm fishing heavy cover, but I trap with it because in the spring, when I'm nose down in that grass, I can very efficiently clean the bait with a one pop. And as that grass gets bigger and I'm popping that grass even more, it's the same thing as when I'm cranking that grass. It's more efficient for me to pop it one time and clean the bait and continue my retrieve than to have that crankbait rod where I look like I'm out there cutting down a tree with an axe, all day long, just ripping like violently all I'm trying to do is not necessarily get the bait through the grass, but get it through the grass cleanly. Mm. And then in the fall, when I'm yo-yoing, I like that little bit extra backbone because a lot of times you get up here and the bait starts falling, you get bit, and you're all out of shape. You're up here, and you can just swing it. Mm. So, I mean, neither way is wrong. They're both right, but get to know the setup.
Come on, Corbin. Totally blow us away here.
Deep flex. I mean, deep flex, dude. I mean, proof's in the pudding for me with that.
Yeah.
And I don't go to heavier line. I throw 10 pound in the summertime. I throw 10 pound in the fall. I throw 10 pound in the early winter. I may go to 12 in the springtime. That's it. Because
you're fishing all open water.
Well, and realistically speaking, I'm fishing the Northeast. If I go to the Potomac River, I throw 12 pound. Yes, there's a chance that I may catch a 6 pounder or maybe bigger, but 12 pound fluorocarbon's pretty strong for me.
Oh,
And like, I've never had any issues with it. And so for me, I just feel like the lighter line for me helps get more action out of the trap, which is different than other people that are throwing heavier line. So sometimes I may have to make an adjustment and go to a different size buoyancy or upsize or downsize. But for me, like, I would rather adjust my trap than adjust my line because I'm used to the setup that I'm doing. And that's just, it works for me. So like, that's where I would tweak my trap and change my presentation that way instead of changing my line.
So, hold me up 2 of the yo-yo baits that we yo-yo with.
Red eye.
Probably the two that I use the most. Number 1, Spro Uruku. Number 2, Jackal TN70, because of their nose down
and
attitude.
I guess the third one would definitely be the red eye shad.
Yeah, I don't yo-yo with my TN70s a whole lot.
That's your sweeping bait.
It's my sweeping and maybe a little hot, but I don't consider that a yo-yo. Like when I'm talking about yo-yoing, that's where I like that Strike King because it's not nose down and it shimmies and you rip it up and it flutters down. And like, that's what I'm talking about, your traditional yo-yo bait for me. Mm. And then I will use a Spro mixed in because it shimmies a little bit different. And I can still kind of do that hard nose down with the Spro. So those are my two. Those are my two.
Yeah. For me, the most important thing on a yo-yo presentation is a nose down attitude. To me, it's the key. As soon as I know I'm yo-yoing a bait, I want a bait that falls like this. I want a bait that, if you will, picture it this way, it stands on its nose. That's the way I want. That's the way I want a yo-yo. Shallow or deep. That's for me.
Yeah.
But if I could only have one for the rest of my life, it would be a Ruku 75. Man, that's a bad boy right there.
So the 3 retrieves that I want to just kind of reiterate to you guys one more time is the yo-yo technique or the jigging technique, which guys talk about, and the straight retrieve, throwing it out and reeling it back. Now on that straight retrieve, you can burn it, you can medium pace it, or you can fish it a little bit slower, and get it down a little deeper, right? So there's a lot going on with that straight retrieve. You can really mess around with the speed with that. And then there's that last way, and has a lot to do with grass, is that ripping technique. Now you can call it ripping in the grass, or you can call it a sweeping technique like Corbin does, more in the open water. He sweeps it a little bit more, but it's a type of it's not ripping, but it's more of a sweep. in the grass, you're kind of popping it and ripping it, and you're really creating that strike just by that thing flashing off that grass, and that's very important. So that's the retrieves you want to mess with. That's the ones you want to practice. They're the ones you want to try all the time. But if you're just one of them guys, just want to chuck and wind them, they're excellent for that. They are just excellent for chucking and winding, and you just got to mess with the speed until you come up with the right right speed for the day. I'm going to skip over speed because I think we covered that pretty well.
Absolutely.
And we definitely covered the hooks. And the rods we kind of touched on here a little bit, but is there anything else you want to add to rods, Corbin? Do you use a composite rod at all for rattle trap fishing?
Like graphite? I mean,
you use graphite. Do you use a glass rod any way at all?
Glass.
You don't use glass.
I have a Loomis Deep Flex, but that's still graphite. I don't use glass for anything. I mean, I would try the 7.6 medium heavy Zodius. That seems to have the right action. Only because they don't make the rod that I use anymore. But for me, like, the longer the rod within reason, the better. Sometimes, like, I like to have something that I can make a long cast.
Well, the Deep Flex is a graphite rod that has a bend similar to a crankbait rod. It's a slower, more moderate tapered rod. So that's important to know that to have that. I fish a lot of glass. I love glass. I just really dig the S class, and you're going to get those fish in the boat no matter what. And then, like George says, we also do because me and him fish a lot of the same stuff. When we get in those other situations, we like that medium. It's, the medium. It is a fast taper, but it's a medium power. So when you set the hook, the rod really loads up, and you have a lot of rod there.
It does,
and that really helps you with getting those fish in the boat.
And I'm not afraid to change rods for a specific situation.
Yeah.
I remember a few years ago, I got on a really epic yo-yo bite on awesome, probably one of the best smallmouth cold water yo-yo trap bites I've ever been on in my life. Lasted for weeks. And the rod that worked the best for me was an 843 MBR, which is a medium. It's the same rod I throw a chatterbait and a freaking spinnerbait on. Yeah. But those fish were, they were catching me off guard a lot. That particular, so I made a change right in the middle of the morning, man. I'd missed 2 or 3 fish. I made a change, got dialed into that. Another time I was on the Potomac River, and I was cranking a baby 1- on grass, and I was getting the fish to win the tournament to eat it, but I couldn't get them in the boat. You know what? Make a change. So, the more you make a change, the easier it is to make a change.
Right.
So that's for me. I'm not going to hesitate. I'll change rods up quick.
Well, it's good to fish with different guys too, to see what they do. And like I said, I learned a lot from Corbin, from some of his techniques and what he does that to add to what I do. And I became a better fisherman because of it. And I paid attention to George when I'm out with him and seen some stuff that he did that I didn't do, and I added it to my arsenal. So make sure, when you're fishing with somebody and he's catching fish, just pay attention to what's going on with that. And don't be afraid to try something. Don't be afraid to try these different ways of retrieving. Pay attention to your hooks, pay attention to your equipment, fish good quality line. And you're going to land those fish and get them in the boat. And it's a deadly way of fishing. It's a deadly way to catch fish all year long. I hope this enlightened you guys a little bit more, and we got a little bit more specific on some stuff. There were some other questions, and one of the questions was, do we use hybrid hooks? And this kind of goes to the hook thing, but there is a hook out there that's a hybrid hook. It has a little blade on it. I haven't tried it yet, but there's guys that are putting this on all their crankbaits, and you can put it on a rattle trap just to add a little bit more flash. Nothing wrong with a hybrid hook. I'm definitely going to do that this year, especially when I'm slow rolling these a little bit. I'm going to fish out a lot more and try that. Brian Stockwell, how you doing, buddy? Yeah, you do. How you doing, pal? Good to see you, man. Thanks for stopping in. So, we're going to move on here, and I hope that helps you out with your rattle trap fishing. I hope that kind of clarified some stuff, you know, from the way that we fish them that might help you in the future. And we're going to get into some tackle talk right now. Let's do it. Yeah. So,
let me reach in my showcase here, Mike. I got something to show the world.
yeah. So here at Susquehanna Fishing Tackle, the last 3 weeks have been crazy in here. We've been unboxing and hanging up tackle like unbelievable. We get in tractor trailers every single day, and it's just really fun, and it's really exciting right now because we're seeing all of the new stuff. We're messing with all the new stuff. We're getting to, you know, find spots and hang it up, and it's just the shop's really starting to get packed again. And today we had a special delivery, and we got the Shimano Corrado 150s in. And tell us a little bit about
it's the
this.
MGL.
And the MGL, yeah.
So, you know, Shimano, last year they introduced a Corrado 70 MGL. MGL stands for Magnum Light. So it means it's got the very lightweight spool. They called it MGL spool. And if you look at all your reel companies, Shimano, Daiwa, etc., you know, the models that they make with the super light spools are their most high performance casting reels. They'll cast a bigger range of weights from, you know, light to heavy. They'll cast more efficiently because there's very little bit of your casting energy is wasted by spinning the spool per se. Once you get the spool spinning, it spins much more efficiently on its own. So this is a 150 size reel, which basically means it has a little bit smaller spool than a 200, but not much. And it's a 32 millimeter spool, which is the height of the spool, which is why it has such a low profile. But yet it has a, wonder if we can get the stack. Can you grab a box so we can get a yardage on this thing? I think it handles the standard yardage of line.
It doesn't look that much smaller. Really doesn't look that much smaller.
No, I mean the spool's basically a full size spool, but I just want to make sure I get it right.
Yeah.
You have a cross carbon drag, which is the washer. So if you ever take a reel apart, on top of your drive gear is a fibrous washer. Okay.
Yeah.
That's your drag. This is in this reel. It's a carbon.
Yeah. That's her highest grade drag washer.
Yeah. All your better reels today are using carbon drag washers, and the reason for it is it never sticks, and it never chatters. The drag just comes out. If you're ever fighting a big fish, man, you know, and you're like, oh, you got him on a rattle trap. You know,
on a glass rod, with 30-pound
and
braid.
you got him next to the side of the boat, man, and he's a big fish and he's surging, right? You will appreciate a good drag.
Yeah.
You know, one of the things that annoys me to no end when I'm watching professional fishing tournaments is these guys got all this great equipment and they're fighting these big fish and they're reaching up here and pulling line off their reel. You either don't trust your drag, or you don't have a good drag.
Yeah.
You know, when you catch a big fish and you're fighting them close to the boat, that's when bad stuff happens. And if you have a good drag, you're lower in that
percentage.
You know that, yeah. You know what I'm saying?
Percentage.
You're landing more.
Yep.
So this reel is rated at 90 yards of 14. So a 200 size reel, which is a standard size reel, is 120 yards of 14. So in fact, the 150 is a slightly smaller spool. So when they say it's rated at 90 yards of 14, if you were to put 17 on here, you would get about 70 yards. If you were to put 20 on here, you would get like 50 yards. So if you're using this as a flipping reel with 20 or 17, you're good. You know, if you're using this as your primary offshore deep crankbait reel, you probably could have chose wiser.
Yeah.
Because what happens in that scenario, and we've talked about this a lot. So when you're looking at these reels and you're looking at why is he so hung up on what the yardage is on this 150 size spool? Well, this is why I'm so hung up on it. There's a couple circumstances where it matters. All the other circumstances, it doesn't matter. But if you're a bomb and a crankbait, if you're an offshore guy and you want to throw a 6XD across the lake so that you're in that strike zone longer, or if you're a, you know, on a like late summer frog pattern where you need to get that frog as far away from the boat as is possible, you know, you're going to upsize your rod, obviously, but you better also upsize your spool because it's an efficiency thing. Because as the spool empties, the inertia goes away and the spool dies, therefore your cast dies.
Yep.
Well, if you have more line, your spool doesn't empty as quick. So, you know,
are you saying that for my rattle trap setup, this is or is not the reel for me?
Well,
Just kidding. I'm just
I
kidding.
mean, you could
This is a good reel,
probably
'cause I'm
empty
using
this.
10,
Yeah, but
I don't know, 10-pound test, he might not be able to.
yeah, I mean, I'm trying to, you know, I'm trying to really focus on this point here because it's really important.
Yeah.
You know, other than bombing a crankbait, and maybe launching a frog into next week and throwing a big swim bait, this reel is good for everything else.
Yeah.
George, I am super excited about the Corrado MGLs. Personally, I fished the SLX MGL and the Corrado 70 MGL all year, and I'm very impressed with them. But what I'm really excited about is from an efficiency standpoint for me, a lot of the line that I throw is 10, 12, or 15. Okay. So this right here is going to be my baby because I don't need a 200 size spool for everything. And
Yeah.
I realized that really after fishing the 70 MGL this year with 15-pound fluorocarbon all year, I'm like, man, like it's a little bit lighter. It fits in my hand better. I am super excited about this reel for that purpose right there, because that MGL spool just casts so easy. And I mean, far distance, it's incredible. There's a big difference to me between that and anything that I fished.
Yeah.
Well, and the other thing about the MGL spools is when it comes to the realm of skipping, if you're skipping a jig or if you're skipping a chatterbait or if you're skipping a buzzbait, they really are efficient at skipping also.
Yep.
So you have a 150 size, the MGL, the Magnum Light spool, that's key. Other than the BFS Corrado, which is a specialty reel, which we'll talk about again at a later date, this is the lightest Corrado they've ever made. This is 6.5 ounces, which is pretty light for a full-size reel.
It's very light.
It's an aluminum frame, aluminum side plates, cross carbon drag.
What gear does it have?
Has micro module gear,
Which is huge.
Yeah, so the micro module gear, if you picture your drive gear, so when you turn the handle on a bait casting reel, you're spinning your drive gear. And your drive gear engages, it meshes with the pinion gear. And the pinion gear turns the spool. If you open up your reel and you pull out your spool and you look at that little gear that's spinning in there that has the cross pattern on it, that's your pinion gear. The drive gear is spinning that, okay? So micro module means that the teeth on the gears are small.
Right.
They mesh. There's more of them.
Yeah. So instead of, I like to use my fingers, instead of just two gears matching up at any one time and then catching teeth matching up at one time, a micro modular is several
more.
Teeth. It's a lot more. You got a lot more surface area, and then that gives you more torque and less binding. You get a lot more torque out of it. It's very smooth.
Yeah,
you get a lot more torque.
Very fluid.
It's fluid.
And a lot less wear.
And a lot less wear and more and stronger.
You know, micro module is like every company has their little niche.
Yep.
And Shimano's is that micro module gear, be it in a spinning reel.
Yep.
Or be it in a casting reel. If you choose a reel that they have with micro module gear, you're making a big uptick in your choice there. Other companies have their own niches, but this is Shimano's niche. Now, the other thing they have is the SVS braking system, which is 6. This is a centrifugal braking system. There's 6 brake blocks, depending on how many you have turned on. This reel has 2 on, 4 off, which is probably where most experienced anglers are going to be. And then the wear surface that it rubs on, and I know you guys can't see this stuff, but the wear surface it rubs on is easily adjustable. Let me close this back up with this little dial right here. And it just says more. So, if you need a little more braking, you can just reach down there, turn that dial a little bit. And all you're doing is adding a finite little tiny bit of braking to really the front end of your cast. Because as that cast dies, those brake blocks kind of back off a little bit because they're driven by centrifugal force. It's kind of an on-demand thing. So if you're getting that little fluff on there and, you've got your cast control adjusted, you're not blowing it up. So let's say you have 2 brake blocks on, 4 off. You're not blowing the reel up, but you're getting a tiny bit of fluff on there. Just put a little bit more braking on there.
Yeah.
Okay, now, if you're not, challenge yourself and back it off a little bit.
Yep.
So the last thing on the MGL is $199.99.
Yeah, great price. Great price.
And the right hand high gear, which is a 7.4-to-1 ratio reel, is heavily in stock at SFT.
Yep.
And sfttackle.com.
Yep. So make sure you get them because that's not going to last long, is it, Corbin? Because probably Corbin's going to go back here and grab about 6 of them.
No. I'm on a tackle ban.
He's on a tackle ban.
But listen. One thing, guys, I just looked at the box here, and George, I want you to kind of break this down for our viewers because I talked about this when we talked about the Corrado 70. Okay, and I said when go with an 8 or 7, you can do everything with that. This is a 7-to-1, but what I noticed 7.4-to-1 is 29 inches per turn. So this is not far. Like this is a great all-around reel. It's not like it's not too fast. You can do everything with it. You can even crank with it. You can literally do everything with that reel because as your spool changes, your inches per turn change.
That's
important. The thing you need to understand about that, and Corbin makes a great point. This reel has a 7.4-to-1 gear ratio. Every time I turn this handle 1 rev, the spool turns 7.4 times, which translates on a full spool to 29 inches of line being retrieved. And the reason it's not in the 30s is because this is a 32 millimeter diameter spool, so it's not wrapping as much line. But the higher gear ratio reel, you have to understand what gear ratio means. And I want you to think about riding on your 10-speed bike. Okay?
Oh, that's been a while.
I want to ride my bicycle. So you're pedaling along, 5th gear.
You don't have micromodular gearing.
5th gear on your bike, you get on a hill and you roll right up that hill, no problem. That's a 6.2-to-1 reel.
Yeah.
Okay? If you're in 7th gear on that bike and you hit that hill, you're standing up and you're the guy on the Peloton commercial trying to get to the top of that hill. So, yes, you are bringing in 29 inches per crank, but you are giving up torque. So if you're a cranking guy, you may want to go to the 6.2-to-1 ratio. Unless you're a trapping square billing guy, then you see what I'm saying. Take it into consideration. Areas where you want to pick up slack, go to the higher gear ratios.
Yep.
Right, Corbin?
Yep.
Well, there you have it. The
What do you think,
Corrado MGL 150 HGs are in stock right now.
Are you going to get any of those?
Somebody's already talking about the left-handed. No, we did not get left-handed reels yet. I imagine they're following these, so they'll be showing up sometime soon. We're just glad to get these reels out of Shimano.
We got 7.4-to-1 right hand.
Yeah,
that's it.
But
we got a lot of them.
We did get a lot of them, so there's plenty to go around for everybody.
The other ratios will follow. Left-handers are always late. Left-handers are never, when they introduce a reel, you never get lefties until like December.
That's crazy.
I know. I
I
don't
just wonder why it is. I mean,
Yeah.
it
They
like,
make righties first.
well, a couple years ago, it would have made sense with the left-handed surges and people like myself. I mean, my gosh,
I know. What's up with
They,
that?
they ought to be like,
That's
"Hey,
how they
coach,
do it.
I know.
I keep
know.
telling them my peeps like the lefts. My peeps
I
like
know.
the lefts, and
Listen,
I know.
they keep pushing us off.
That's how it is.
Yeah.
It's funny
In
because
the big city.
the Northeast were very left-handed. In sales, the Northeast is very big and left-handed. As soon as you go south, very little.
Well,
There's a silver lining to the left-handers coming later.
well, the Northeast is probably also really big on green pumpkin. As soon as you go south, it's probably a watermelon red. So it goes hand in hand, man.
That's right.
There's a benefit to left-handers coming later.
Yeah, all the kinks are worked out.
No, has nothing to do with that. The kinks were worked out
I
before
know.
they built one.
I know.
Yeah.
The benefit is it gives you longer to save. So buy two.
Oh,
Huh?
Christmas time.
One for
Yeah.
you, one for you, and the other one for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One from my right hand and one from my left hand.
Yeah.
So there you go, guys. We did get some other Bantams in. We got some Metaniums. We got a few Aldebaran reels in. So some of the stuff's rolling in here. Keep checking our inventories and
Oh.
if you're in and look for stuff.
Well, I mean, this week, Mike, we got in massive shipments from Spro,
Yeah.
which webmaster Matt is building Spro pages as we speak.
Yeah, there's some new
Well, and
Spro-
George, you got a
Spro
lot
stuff.
of you got
We
some
got-
new stuff, colors.
We
and
got
baits and-
massive shipments from Gamakatsu, Spro and Gamakatsu. I'm talking big time.
which is cool because we were running out of hooks and now we're back up and running.
While we're flush.
Yeah.
We also got a bunch of their new swag. Spro and Gamakatsu are like swagging it out. We got all kinds of cool t-shirts, sun shirts, waterproof bags, tackle boxes, all kinds of crazy stuff. We got a ginormous shipment of Strike King in, and I'm talking,
Yeah.
dude.
It was terrible.
And we got some of the new stuff in, but most of their new stuff is slated for next month.
Yeah.
We have got in along with Strike King because they're a family brand. We got a ton of lose in.
Yep.
Next week we're going to be debuting 2 of the new lose reels.
Yeah.
But if you need some stuff in the meantime, like some of them hard to get reels like the pitch and skips, we got lots of them.
We got them.
And all their new rods, lots of them. We got in a giant shipment of AFCO, and I do mean giant. It was literally like a couple skids.
Yeah, the thing about that is and we still have on sale the older style AFCO Reapers.
They're dwindling.
You got they are running out, but we still have some left. Make sure if you were looking for a Reaper and you want to get one on sale, I think they're $51 right now, and maybe a little bit of change. Great buy on those, but the new ones, tremendous. A little thicker, a little different material.
The material feels different.
It's a little different
It
material.
reminds me more of a, what would I call that? A sport shirt type material.
Yeah, and they got new colors. They got some really cool colors out there, and then there's some cool camos that are still coming.
There's 3 new camos that are next month.
Yep.
But we got a ton of AFCO in. We got a new color in the windproof Reaper.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
Charcoal.
Awesome.
We got the
buddy.
charcoal
Beautiful.
in. So
Yep.
now we also got a big shipment of Sunline. And let me tell you something. Get your pencils and your notepads out and write this down.
All right.
The lithium battery world is exploding. Now, you might be asking yourself, what does this have to do with Sunline? Well, you're about to find out. The key ingredient in a lithium battery, a bonding agent, is the same exact crystals that are used to make fluorocarbon. So the lithium battery market with all these cars, in case you're wondering why Elon Musk is worth $288.9 billion, it's because he's buying all the fluorocarbon.
My tackle band's getting lifted, baby.
So what's going on is, and this is no joke, people, the fluorocarbon line guys are like throwing you under the bus in certain circumstances. Not everybody, but in certain circumstances, you're getting thrown under the bus because the lithium battery guys are like, okay, you use that to make line? That's cute. How about if we double the price? Oh, You don't need to make line anymore. We thought you'd see it our way.
Yeah.
So I know, like next year when the supplies run out, Sunline Assassin is no more.
He gone.
Now I don't know when the supplies are going to run out. You know, we just laid in an order that's probably going to carry us through next year. But keep that in mind when you're stocking up on your fluorocarbon over the winter. Some of your companies now, I know Seagar is not going anywhere. They make a lot of fluorocarbon, and they also make the crystals that are used to make the fluorocarbon. So they are going to feed the lithium market, but they're not going to cut their own throat.
Yeah.
So words of the wise on the fluorocarbon.
That's an interesting. I didn't even know that.
That's
crazy.
I was undercover for the last 6 months in the lithium mines over in India, and I picked up some intel and I ran with it.
What's up, Matt Elliott? Glad you stopped in. Better late than never. But you know what's cool about this? You can rewatch this because it's going to be on Facebook, and you can just kind of click on it at your leisure and watch it anytime you want. And for all you guys, we also put this in a podcast form, and we download it on our podcast station. You can pick it up on Spotify. You can get it on iHeartRadio. You can get it all over the place. You can just put Tackle Shop Live in there, and it'll pop right up for you, and you guys can listen to it while you're driving around.
Can I put a shameless plug out there?
What?
While you're podcasting?
No, go ahead.
After you've watched all of your Tackle Shop Live or listened to all your Tackle Shop Live podcasts, and you're still not at your final destination, you want something different and off the map, search the Cigar Guys podcast. I'm just throwing a little advertisement out there for another podcast.
Yeah, that's a fun one.
Yeah, we won't really get into it. Getting back on this product, Mike, I have one more big announcement. And this has been something that's been hard to come by it's been really hard for me to keep in stock. Is Lucky Craft.
Yeah.
It's because I keep buying them.
I've been really struggling. And I know you guys are pissed, because it's prime jerkbait season and I'm out of Ghost Minnow and we're out of Chartreuse Shad.
Yep.
And, we're trying. Lucky Craft's been struggling. But we got a really big shipment. There's some good people that work at Lucky Craft. Big shout out to Mako. I know she's a big fan of the show.
Yeah.
Listen.
What up, Mako?
We got a bunch of Lucky Craft in.
Awesome.
We're gonna put it up live tomorrow, but it just came in tonight, right before the show. UPS came in late. The Columbia Halloween parade's going on, and the poor freaking UPS driver
got caught in it.
He had to go through like 49 blocks of Columbia to get here. And he said, if I didn't like you guys, I would have told you my truck broke down.
George, I'm practicing.
Yeah, we can't go we're going to go long tonight because we can't go anywhere anyways because it's like Paradeville, baby.
Oh my God.
But yeah, Mike, that's all I got on I wanted to break down that reel. I know Corbin wanted to talk about it. I know you were excited about it.
I definitely want to talk about it.
And I'm the buyer here. I'm a real product guy. I'm so excited to be getting in these massive quantities of product. I really am. And, if you want to stop by the shop, we have a couple of really killer deals going on some closeout rods and some closeout reels that you can take advantage of. And because we got this new stuff coming in now, and we need some space for it.
Yep.
Yeah.
And there's some discontinued product that's got to go.
Yeah.
Yep.
So anyways,
well,
things are the supply chain is starting to twist our way.
Yeah.
So there you go. So Mike, that's all I got on that, brother.
Yeah. Well, hold your horses. I think you got one more thing to talk about. Oh yeah.
Not according to my notebook here.
That's because you lift up that reel. We got to talk about the Stunna.
Oh yeah.
This is the Stunner. This is the Stunna
epic product
review.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Corbin and I went fishing yesterday,
and I've been fishing with it since last Tackle Shop Live. And we got a lot of things we can talk about with it.
Yeah, I mean, Corbin and we took the one and only GDP out for a day of fishing. Little midweek day off for Big G here. And I wanted to fish the Stunna. I'm a big jerkbait guy. I'm a huge mega bass junkie, like many of you. I'm a huge Lucky Craft Pointer 100 fan. And I took one box of jerkbaits with me because I was riding on Corbin's boat. I didn't want to be a overbearing guest
because I had 4.
I brought one box of
Jerkbait.
jerkbaits with me, and I had it.
That's funny because I never take anything when I go fishing with
Yeah,
Corbin. I just fish all his stuff.
That's what Greg did. Greg's like, "What do I need?" He's like, "Shut up."
Yeah, I had it I had my box loaded up with all the stuff that I've used over the years for those conditions, and I said, you know what, I'm going to fish some Stunnas, and it was super windy, 30-mile-an-hour winds, which put a big chop on the water. The water was clear, so I decided to go with a really aggressive, what I like to call a reaction color. And I put that red crawl.
That's a reaction color.
That orange-red crawl on.
For sure.
And I learned a few things about the Stunna. First of all, it has a really aggressive cut, a really aggressive side-to-side cut. The +1 is even more aggressive than the standard. The second thing I learned about the Stunna, it's slow sinking, but it's extremely easy to control the depth at which you have it at. So what I did and what I'd recommend you guys do is play around on the side of the boat for a few minutes and kind of get a count going in your head on the pace that the thing is sinking and kind of know your water depth. And when you think you're getting in that zone, just pick your rod up a little bit and pick your pace up a little bit, and that bait will perfectly hover at that depth. Yeah. I was able to control the depth of that bait in as little as 3 feet of water. And with the +1, I was able to let that bait get down into 11 and 12 feet of water and occasionally make bottom contact. So it's another good tool. I caught a lot of fish on it. The hooks are freaking fierce.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, you're liable to get a hook in your hand taking the damn thing out of the package.
There's no doubt.
And I mean, you should burn the package off the bait.
And I mean, I threw it a couple days here recently. And my thing is, what George said is super important. Okay. I am a jerkbait fanatic. I mean, I've thrown almost every jerkbait known to man, and this is a slow sinking jerkbait. I had better success with the Stunner on 12-pound when I usually fish 10 because of the sinking thing. Now, again, that twitch up with the rod tip is very, very important.
In shallow water.
In shallow water, it hunts, but it's not as aggressive as what I would call a Lucky Craft or a KVD.
Well, the +1 is.
But it's more aggressive than a Vision 110. So it's definitely going to have its time and its place. I would almost say, George, it hunts kind of like the re-range, because that re-range is kind of in that same general.
Well, the +1 Stunna has when you pop it, it literally jumps that far left.
Yeah.
And that far right. I mean, it's a big wide stance.
Yeah.
The standard Stunna, you get a lot of flash. It's about this far.
A little tighter.
A little tighter.
It's
what you would expect on that smaller lip.
Yep.
But I'm here to tell you, it's and again, I mean, the Berkeley to me is the evil empire. They are the ban of all smaller tackle companies, but they're a necessary evil because their products are super high quality and they catch the hell out of fish.
Yeah.
But, the Stunna looks a lot like a Mega Bass Vision, whatever. I'm not getting into the politics of this. I'm just letting you know that bad boy will flat out catch some fish, because I banged him up pretty good on that red one yesterday.
And, like, the biggest thing for you viewers out there, like, oh, what kind of noises does it make, X, Y, Z? I want to compare it very similar to the Chapo, where the Chapo is different than the Whopper Plopper. It has the same type plastic clinkiness as the Chapo.
Totally different sound.
Totally different sound.
And I think there's a time and place for that, right?
There's definitely a time and a place for it, because when everybody else is throwing,
they're eating it, dog.
The same thing. Yeah.
They are eating. And the colors, I caught them on that red.
Yep.
Which, that to me is a major reaction color. And I also caught them on shad fillet, which is kind of the Elegee bone knockoff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And of course, when you have heavy intermittent clouds and heavy wind, those reaction colors really play. And then when it calmed down and laid up, obviously those colors had to be taken out of play.
Stowed.
You know, so we went into more of the ghosties. You know,
Well, I
the
appreciate you
stealth
guys.
sheds.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys fishing them. You know, giving us that update. It was you know, over a couple periods of time. It wasn't just a one-shot deal. They went back out with it, learned a little bit more about it, and gave us a good update on it. And I think it's definitely going to be a player for our tackle box, and we can add it to our mix. But it's getting late here, guys.
Absolutely.
Thank you everybody for stopping by. Another edition of Tackle Shop. We're going to come back again next week with another great show, and we're dropping a bunch of videos on our YouTube page over the next couple of weeks. So make sure you keep up with that. You know, some of this stuff is, you know, we're just putting into a small video, short video formats on there. And we're just going to keep adding to that. We're you know, we're going to, whatever we know, we're going to try to spread it out to everybody as we always do. Chuck Rife, how you doing? John, how are you, pal? Man, good seeing you. Matt Elliott, yeah, man, that's awesome seeing you. Go. Thanks for stopping by, bud. You are the best as always. And until next time, we'll catch you at the next Tackle Shop Live. Sunny day, right there you took my breath away. Young and pretty, was it just a dream? The next day you called me up, you told me I'm your little buttercup. You came over and you fell into my arms. Well, I know what I feel. Please tell me your love is real. You make me smile when I think of you. If I am down, knowing how you're blue, I can't get enough. You make me happy, I feel so fine. Oh, how I wish that you were mine. I can't get enough. I woke up all soaked in sweat, with chills running down my neck. I'm going crazy from just the thought of you. A long blonde hair and your beautiful smile. Your sense of humor makes it all worthwhile. Don't make me wait.